The morning light filtered through the dusty blinds of Lily's bedroom, casting long shadows across the untouched space that had become Sarah Mitchell's daily pilgrimage of pain. 2 years, 730 days since her 10-year-old daughter vanished from a hospital waiting room, and still, Sarah couldn't bring herself to change a single thing. "Morning, sweetheart," she whispered to the empty room, her voice cracking like brittle autumn leaves. At 42, Sarah had aged a decade in those 2 years. Her once vibrant auburn hair now showed streaks of premature grey, and the laugh lines around her green eyes had deepened into permanent creases of worry. The librarian who once captivated children with animated storytelling now moved through life like a ghost, haunting her own existence. She approached Lily's collection of dolls, arranged precisely on the white wooden shelf, each one positioned exactly as her daughter had left them. Princess Belle with her golden gown, Ariel with her flowing red hair, Rapunzel with her impossibly long braid. But the space where Marina, Lily's beloved mermaid doll, should have been remained glaringly empty. "She wouldn't have left you behind," Sarah murmured, running her finger along the vacant spot. "My brave little girl would never abandon Marina." The memory crashed over her like a tidal wave. Lily's excited chatter about swimming like a real mermaid someday, despite the wheelchair that had been her companion since birth, due to spina bifida. Dr. Marcus Whitmore had promised to discuss an experimental procedure that might improve her mobility. Lily had clutched Marina tight, her blue eyes sparkling with hope. Sarah's hands trembled as she straightened the remaining dolls, the familiar panic clawing at her chest. The therapist called them anxiety attacks, but Sarah knew better. This was guilt, pure, suffocating guilt for those 10 minutes she'd spent updating insurance information while her daughter sat alone. The empty house echoed with phantom laughter and wheelchair wheels on hardwood floors. David had left 6 months after Lily's disappearance, claiming he couldn't handle Sarah's obsession with a case the police had quietly shelved. But how could she explain that a mother's heart never stopped searching? Her phone buzzed. A text from Detective Johnson. "No new developments, weekly check-in complete." Sarah stared at the message, then at the empty space on the shelf. Somewhere out there, her daughter was growing up without her. Somewhere Marina was waiting to be reunited with the little girl who'd whispered mermaid stories to her every night. "I won't stop looking," Sarah promised the silent room. "I'll find you, baby girl. I'll bring you both home." But as she closed Lily's door behind her, Sarah had no idea that fate was about to deliver the first piece of a puzzle that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her daughter's disappearance. March 15th, 2022, 2 years earlier. "Mum, do you think Dr. Whitmore will really help me swim like Ariel?" Lily's voice bubbled with excitement as Sarah pushed her wheelchair through the automatic doors of Portland Hills Medical Center. 10-year-old Lily Mitchell was a force of nature trapped in a small body. Born with spina bifida, she'd never let her condition dim her radiant spirit. Her blonde curls bounced as she clutched Marina, the teal-scaled mermaid doll that had been her constant companion since her 5th birthday. "Dr. Whitmore is very special, sweetheart," Sarah replied, smoothing her daughter's hair. "He helps children like you discover new possibilities." The waiting room buzzed with quiet conversations and the rustle of magazines. Lily positioned Marina on her lap, whispering secrets to the doll while other children played nearby. Her bright blue eyes sparkled with dreams of underwater adventures and swimming pools where wheelchairs couldn't follow. "Mrs. Mitchell?" The receptionist's voice cut through the ambient noise. "We need to update Lily's insurance information. Could you come to the front desk?" Sarah glanced at her daughter, who was engrossed in an animated conversation with Marina about coral reefs and sea creatures. The waiting area was full of families, nurses moving efficiently between patients. It seemed perfectly safe. "I'll be right back, baby." 5 minutes, okay?" "Okay, Mummy, Marina and I will practice our swimming strokes." Lily giggled, making the doll glide through imaginary water. Sarah walked the 20 feet to the reception desk, insurance cards in hand. The paperwork seemed endless. Forms to sign, policies to verify, medical history to confirm. She kept glancing back at Lily, who sat contentedly in her bright pink wheelchair. Marina pressed against her chest. "This will just take a few more minutes," the receptionist apologized, shuffling through files. When Sarah finally looked up from the final signature, her blood turned to ice. The pink wheelchair sat empty. Marina lay fallen on the grey carpet, her emerald tail catching the fluorescent light. But Lily, her precious, irreplaceable daughter, was gone. "Lily!" Sarah's scream shattered the waiting room's calm. Parents looked up from magazines, children stopped playing, and nurses came running. But the silence that followed was deafening. In 10 minutes, just 10 innocent minutes, her entire world had vanished without a trace. The security cameras would later show nothing unusual. The exits remained monitored, yet somehow, impossibly, Lily had simply disappeared, leaving behind only Marina and a mother's heart torn in two. "She never goes anywhere without Marina," Sarah sobbed to the police officer hours later. "She would never leave her behind. Never." Present day, Portland Hills Medical Center, annual charity event. Sarah's hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel outside the medical center. The Hope in Motion banner fluttered in the October breeze, mocking her with its cheerful optimism. Every instinct screamed at her to drive away, but something deeper, a mother's desperate need to be close to where she'd last seen her daughter, pulled her forward. "You don't have to do this," Dr. Reynolds, her therapist, had warned. Returning to that place could trigger severe emotional responses. But Sarah needed to feel connected to Lily somehow, even if it meant walking through her own personal hell. The charity event bustled with Portland's elite, doctors in expensive suits mingling with donors over champagne and canapeed conversations. Sarah volunteered to help load donation boxes into cars, needing physical work to quiet her racing mind. "Mrs. Mitchell, could you help me with these boxes?" Dr. Patricia Wells gestured toward a stack of medical supplies. "Dr. Whitmore's Mercedes is right over there." Sarah's stomach clenched at the name. Dr. Marcus Whitmore, the orthopedic surgeon who'd been treating Lily, the last person to see her daughter before she vanished. The man who'd sat across from police officers with perfectly composed sympathy, expressing his deep concern for the missing child. The black Mercedes gleamed in the parking lot like a predator waiting in shadows. Sarah approached with trembling steps, balancing the donation boxes. As she leaned into the back seat to arrange the supplies, her eyes fell on something that made her heart stop completely. There, nestled against the leather seat, was Marina. Not just any mermaid doll. This was unmistakably Lily's Marina. The same teal scales that shimmered like real fish skin. The same flowing auburn hair, and most importantly, the tiny heart-shaped patch Sarah had sewn on the left arm after Marina had torn during a particularly enthusiastic tea party. Sarah's hands went numb. The boxes crashed to the ground, medical supplies scattering across the asphalt like her shattered reality. "Are you all right?" Dr. Whitmore's smooth voice came from behind her. Sarah spun around, her green eyes blazing with a fury that surprised them both. "That doll, where did you get that doll?" Dr. Whitmore's composed expression flickered for just a moment, a shadow of something Sarah couldn't quite identify. "Oh, that old thing. I found it abandoned in the hospital months ago, been meaning to donate it to charity." His smile was perfectly professional, but his eyes avoided hers. "Thought some child might enjoy it." "Abandoned?" Sarah's voice cracked. "My daughter would never abandon Marina. She slept with that doll every single night for 5 years. Children lose toys all the time, Mrs. Mitchell. I simply wanted to give it a good home rather than throw it away." But Sarah knew, with the absolute certainty that only a mother possesses, that Dr. Whitmore was lying. Lily would have died before leaving Marina behind voluntarily. As the doctor quickly loaded the remaining boxes and drove away, Sarah stood frozen in the parking lot, watching Marina disappear once again into the darkness. This time, however, she wasn't going to let her daughter's trail go cold. Detective Johnson's skeptical expression said everything before he even spoke. "Sarah, I understand you're grasping for hope, but finding a similar doll doesn't constitute evidence." Sarah sat across from his cluttered desk, her hands clenched into fists. "It's not similar, it's Lily's doll. I sewed that patch myself when she was 7. Dolls can be repaired by anyone," Johnson replied gently. "Dr. Whitmore has been nothing but cooperative throughout this investigation. He's a respected physician who's helped hundreds of children." The dismissal in his voice ignited something fierce in Sarah's chest. If the police wouldn't pursue this lead, she'd have to investigate herself. That afternoon, Sarah returned to Portland Hills Medical Center with a different purpose. She approached the information desk with calculated casualness, claiming to be researching pediatric specialists for a friend's child. "Dr. Whitmore is excellent with special needs children," the volunteer coordinator gushed. "He specifically requests the most challenging cases, children with mobility issues, developmental delays, complex medical histories. He says they inspire him." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Does he often work unusual hours?" "Oh yes, he's very dedicated. Sometimes he comes in on weekends or late evenings for special consultations. He believes in giving these families extra attention when the hospital is quieter. Walking through the medical center's corridors, Sarah struck up conversations with nurses and staff. Most praised Dr. Whitmore's compassion, but Jessica Torres, a pediatric nurse, seemed hesitant when his name came up. "Is everything okay?" Sarah pressed gently. Jessica glanced around nervously. "Dr. Whitmore is thorough, maybe too thorough. He asks very detailed questions about home situations, financial stress, family stability, support systems, more than most doctors would." "What do you mean?" "He keeps extensive notes about parents' personal lives. I've seen him writing observations about marital problems, single parents, families struggling with medical costs." Jessica's voice dropped to a whisper. "Last month I saw him making copies of patient files after hours. When I asked why, he said it was for research purposes." Sarah's blood ran cold. "And research on what?" "He claimed he was studying how family dynamics affect children's recovery rates, but why would he need to take files home for that?" As Sarah left the hospital, Jessica's words echoed in her mind. Dr. Whitmore hadn't just been treating Lily. He'd been studying their family's vulnerabilities. The recent divorce papers, Sarah's financial struggles as a single mother, her isolation after David left. That evening, Sarah spread Lily's medical files across her kitchen table. Dr. Whitmore's notes were indeed unusually detailed, documenting not just Lily's spina bifida but Sarah's emotional state, her work schedule, even her lack of extended family support. One notation made her stomach drop. "Patient's mother shows signs of depression and social isolation. Father absent from recent appointments. Home environment may lack adequate supervision during recovery periods." It read less like medical observations and more like a predator evaluating prey. Sarah grabbed her laptop and began searching. If Dr. Whitmore had targeted Lily because of their family's vulnerability, there might be other families with similar circumstances whose children had also disappeared. What she discovered in the missing children databases would shatter any remaining doubt about Dr. Whitmore's innocence. Sarah's laptop screen glowed in the darkness of her living room as she scrolled through missing children databases, her coffee growing cold beside stacks of printed articles. What she discovered made her hands tremble with a mixture of rage and vindication. Tommy Chen, 8 years old, severe autism, disappeared from Seattle Children's Hospital in 2019 after a consultation with a recommended orthopedic specialist. His mother, recently widowed, had been struggling financially. Emma Rodriguez, 9 years old, cerebral palsy, vanished from a Portland neurologist's office in 2020. Her single father worked 2 jobs to afford her treatments and had missed several appointments due to work conflicts. Alex Foster, 7 years old, muscular dystrophy, last seen leaving a medical appointment in Beaverton in 2021. His grandmother, his sole caregiver, suffered from early-stage dementia. The pattern was horrifyingly clear. Children with disabilities from vulnerable, isolated families. Each case involved medical professionals who had been recommended by colleagues or support groups. Each family had been struggling with financial or emotional burdens that limited their ability to provide constant supervision. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, cross-referencing medical networks and specialist referrals. Dr. Whitmore's name appeared connected to all 3 cases, either as the treating physician, a consulting specialist, or through professional associations with the doctors involved. She tried calling the families. The Chens had moved to California and refused to discuss Tommy's disappearance. The Rodriguez family's phone number was disconnected. Alex Foster's grandmother had been placed in a memory care facility, and his caseworker claimed all records were sealed due to ongoing litigation. But Sarah found something else that made her blood run cold: medical conference attendance records. Dr. Whitmore had spoken at pediatric specialty conferences in Seattle, Portland, and Beaverton in the months preceding each disappearance. His presentation topics focused on innovative treatments for special needs children and family-centered care approaches. At 2:47 a.m., Sarah discovered the most damning connection. A research grant database showed Dr. Whitmore receiving funding from an organization called Healing Hands Global, a foundation supposedly dedicated to providing medical care for disadvantaged children worldwide. The foundation's website looked professionally designed, but felt hollow. Stock photos of smiling children, vague mission statements about creating opportunities for vulnerable youth, and testimonials that read like they'd been written by the same person using different names. Sarah dug deeper into Healing Hands Global's financial records. The organization moved large sums of money between international accounts, with very little documentation about actual medical services provided. Most disturbing were the itemized expenses, labeled as patient transportation and specialized care placements, amounts that seemed far too high for legitimate medical services. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging where you don't belong." Sarah's heart pounded as she stared at the message. Someone was watching her research, monitoring her investigation. But instead of fear, she felt a surge of desperate determination. She screenshot every web page, printed every document, and saved all her research to multiple backup drives. If someone wanted to silence her, it meant she was getting close to the truth about what happened to Lily and the other missing children. As dawn broke over Portland, Sarah realized she wasn't just investigating her daughter's disappearance anymore. She was uncovering what appeared to be an organized network that specifically targeted the most vulnerable children and families in the medical system. The question was, how many children had already disappeared into this nightmare, and how many more were being selected right now? The second message arrived while Sarah was cataloging her research at the Portland Library, surrounded by the familiar comfort of books and hushed conversations. Her phone vibrated against the wooden table, displaying another unknown number. Some children are better cared for away from inadequate parents. Sarah's hands shook as she read the words, each letter feeling like a dagger aimed at her heart. The message wasn't just a threat. It was a twisted justification, suggesting that Lily had been taken for her own good. Over the next 3 days, the harassment escalated with surgical precision. Photos began appearing in her email, images of Sarah leaving her house each morning, walking to work, grocery shopping at the corner market. Someone was documenting her every move with professional thoroughness. The photos came with captions that made her skin crawl. "Routine is predictable. Isolation makes things easier. No one would miss you for hours." Sarah installed security cameras around her small house and changed her daily routes, but the surveillance continued. A photo of her bedroom window taken from the backyard arrived with the message, "Privacy is an illusion." The psychological warfare was methodical. They knew exactly how to torment a mother who'd already lost everything by proving she was powerless to protect even herself. On Thursday evening, Sarah returned home from work to find her front door unlocked. Her heart hammered as she pushed it open, expecting to find her house ransacked. Instead, everything appeared normal until she reached the kitchen. There, centered perfectly on her dining table, lay a photograph of Lily in her wheelchair, taken on the day she disappeared. But this wasn't a family photo. This was a surveillance image captured in the hospital waiting room while Sarah had been at the reception desk. Someone had been watching Lily that day. Someone had photographed her daughter before taking her. Most horrifying of all, Lily's eyes in the photo had been scratched out with red ink, transforming her bright, hopeful face into something from a nightmare. Sarah collapsed into a chair, the photo trembling in her hands. The message was clear. They had taken her daughter. They were watching her now, and they could make her disappear just as easily. But beneath the terror, a fierce anger began to burn. These people, whoever they were, had violated her home, stalked her movements, and defaced her daughter's image. They'd underestimated her resolve. Sarah carefully photographed the defaced picture and added it to her growing evidence file. She installed additional locks, motion sensors, and contacted a security company about upgrading her system. Most importantly, she made copies of all her research and stored them in 3 different locations: her work locker, a safe deposit box, and with her sister in Seattle. That night, as she lay awake listening to every creak and whisper of the old house, Sarah whispered to Lily's empty room, "They think they can scare me into giving up. They're wrong." The hunters had become the hunted, and they were getting desperate enough to show their hand. That desperation meant Sarah was closer to the truth than they wanted her to be. She just had to survive long enough to expose them. The call came at 11:30 p.m., waking Sarah from her first deep sleep in weeks. She'd been dozing fitfully in the living room chair, surrounded by her security monitors and research files. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Jessica Torres from the hospital. I know it's late, but I need to see you tonight." Sarah's pulse quickened. "What's wrong?" "I can't talk over the phone. Meet me at the 24-hour diner on Morrison Street in 20 minutes. Come alone and make sure you're not followed." The urgency in Jessica's voice sent chills down Sarah's spine. She grabbed her jacket and keys, checking her rearview mirror obsessively during the drive through Portland's empty streets. Jessica sat in a corner booth, her usually composed demeanor replaced by visible anxiety. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands shook as she gripped her coffee cup. "I've been documenting Dr. Whitmore's behavior for months," Jessica whispered, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "I thought I was being paranoid, but after our conversation, I started paying closer attention." Sarah opened the envelope to find printed emails, medication logs, and handwritten notes. Her breath caught as she scanned the contents. "He's been requesting sedatives for routine consultations," Jessica explained. "Lorazepam, midazolam, drugs that would make a child compliant and drowsy. When I questioned the orders, he claimed they were for anxiety management during procedures. The medication logs showed a disturbing pattern. Dr. Whitmore consistently over-ordered sedatives for children with disabilities, particularly those from single-parent households or families showing signs of stress." "There's more," Jessica continued, her voice barely audible. "I've heard him making phone calls in languages I don't recognize. He always moves to the supply closet or an empty room when he thinks no one's listening." Sarah studied a printed email thread between Dr. Whitmore and someone identified only as HH, coordinator. The messages were coded, but references to inventory updates and transportation schedules seemed far too clinical for medical discussions. "Last week, I found him accessing patient files for children he's never treated," Jessica revealed. "When he saw me, he claimed he was reviewing cases for a research project. But Sarah, he was looking at files for children who've been reported missing." The pieces of evidence painted a horrifying picture. Dr. Whitmore wasn't just involved in Lily's disappearance. He was actively hunting for more victims, using his position to identify vulnerable children and sedate them for easier transport. "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah asked, though she was grateful for the validation that her suspicions weren't just a grieving mother's desperate imagination. "Because I have a daughter too," Jessica replied, tears streaming down her face. "She's 8 years old and has mild cerebral palsy. Last month, Dr. Whitmore asked me detailed questions about her care, our family situation, whether I had family support. I thought he was just being kind, but now..." Jessica pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a photo, a sweet-faced girl with braces on her legs, smiling from a swing set. "If he's targeting children like mine, like yours, then we have to stop him before more families go through what you've endured." Sarah reached across the table and squeezed Jessica's hand. For the first time in 2 years, she didn't feel completely alone in her fight. "What do we do now?" Jessica asked. Sarah looked at the evidence spread between them, proof that Dr. Whitmore was operating a systematic selection process for vulnerable children. "Now we watch him," Sarah replied with grim determination, "and we document everything until we have enough evidence to make sure he never takes another child." Sarah's heart pounded as she sat in Dr. Whitmore's sterile examination room, playing the role of a patient seeking help for fabricated back pain. The same room where she'd once brought Lily for hope now felt like a predator's den. "Mrs. Mitchell," Dr. Whitmore entered with his practiced smile, but Sarah noticed how his eyes immediately assessed her, calculating, measuring. "What brings you to see me today?" "I've been having severe lower back pain since the stress of everything that happened," Sarah replied, allowing genuine emotion to color her voice. "My regular doctor suggested I see a specialist." Dr. Whitmore's expression shifted to one of manufactured sympathy. "Of course, the trauma of losing Lily must have taken a tremendous physical toll. Please lie down and let me examine you." As he moved around the examination table, Sarah watched his every gesture, looking for tells that Jessica had described. His hands were steady, professional, but she noticed how he positioned himself to block her view of his desk, where patient files lay partially visible. "Have you been sleeping well?" he asked, his tone seemingly caring. "Trauma often manifests in physical symptoms: muscle tension, chronic pain, insomnia." "Not well at all," Sarah admitted truthfully. "I barely sleep anymore. I could prescribe something to help with that. Sometimes a good night's rest is exactly what the body needs to begin healing." His suggestion came too quickly, too eagerly. Sarah's skin crawled as she realized he was already evaluating her vulnerability, just as he had with Lily. "I prefer not to take medication unless absolutely necessary." A flash of irritation crossed his features before the mask of concern returned. Of course, many people feel that way initially. Sarah decided to test him directly. "Dr. Whitmore, I've been thinking about Lily constantly. That little mermaid doll of hers, Marina. I never found it after she disappeared. It's been haunting me." His hands paused for just a fraction of a second during the examination, When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Children's belongings often get misplaced during traumatic events. I'm sure it will turn up eventually. But you said you found Marina at the hospital and donated it to charity, Sarah pressed, watching his face carefully. Dr. Whitmore's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Did I? I handle so many lost items from the hospital. They all blur together after a while. The contradiction hung in the air between them like a live wire. Sarah had caught him in his lie, and they both knew it. Mrs. Mitchell, I think we should focus on your current health concerns rather than dwelling on painful memories, he said, his tone growing cooler. Obsessing over the past isn't healthy for your recovery. As he completed the examination with mechanical efficiency, Sarah noticed beads of perspiration forming on his forehead, despite the cool temperature of the room. His hands trembled slightly as he made notes in her chart. I'm going to recommend some muscle relaxants and perhaps counseling to help you process your grief, he said, already moving toward the door. The receptionist can schedule a follow-up appointment. Actually, I don't think that will be necessary, Sarah replied, sitting up and meeting his gaze directly. I think I need to look elsewhere for help with my pain. Something dangerous flickered in Dr. Whitmore's eyes before he regained his composure. As you wish. Take care of yourself, Mrs. Mitchell. As Sarah left the office, she heard him pick up his phone. His voice was low and urgent, but she caught fragments. Tasks becoming a problem, and may need to accelerate the timeline. The mask had slipped, and Dr. Whitmore was making calls to cover his tracks. Sarah had pushed him too far, and now she'd become a direct threat to whatever operation he was running. But she'd also confirmed what she'd suspected. He was guilty, and he was scared. Sarah and Jessica huddled over laptops in the back corner of the Portland Public Library, surrounded by financial documents and international records that painted a horrifying picture of organized evil. Look at these banking records for Healing Hands Global, Jessica whispered, highlighting transactions on her screen. Payments of $50,000 to $200,000, all going to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Sarah's stomach churned as she followed the money trail. Those amounts, they're not medical expenses, they're prices. The evidence they'd uncovered over 3 weeks of intensive research revealed a sophisticated international network. Healing Hands Global wasn't providing medical care, it was trafficking children with disabilities to wealthy families around the world under the guise of specialized adoption services. This is worse than we thought, Sarah said, pulling up intercepted email communications Jessica had accessed through the hospital system. They're not just taking children randomly, they're filling orders. One email thread made Sarah's blood run cold. Client in Dubai requesting wheelchair-bound female, ages 8-12, blonde preferred, willing to pay premium for docile temperament and speech capabilities. Timeline 30 days. Another read, Swiss family seeks inspiration project. Male with visible disability but high cognitive function. Autism spectrum preferred. Budget, $150,000. They're treating these children like merchandise, Jessica breathed, her face pale with horror. Selling them to rich families who want to feel charitable without going through legitimate adoption processes. Sarah discovered the most damning evidence in a folder labeled Provider Network. Dr. Whitmore was one of 12 physicians across the United States who identified suitable candidates and facilitated their disappearance. Each doctor received substantial payments for successful transfers. The network's sophistication was terrifying. They had contacts in child services, private transportation companies, document forgers, and even judges who could expedite false custody rulings. Children were moved through a carefully orchestrated pipeline that made them virtually impossible to trace. Look at this. Sarah pointed to a manifest labeled Overseas Placements. 23 children in the last 2 years. Tommy Chen is listed as delivered to Australian Family Intellectual Disability Care. Emma Rodriguez shows European placement, mobility assistance required. Jessica's hands shook as she scrolled through more records. Sarah, there's an entry for Lily, LM. Spina bifida, age 10, current location. Transition Facility, Oregon. Status, preparation phase for international placement. Sarah's heart stopped. Current location? Lily is still here? In Oregon? According to this, children spend 6 to 18 months in transition facilities, where they're psychologically conditioned to accept their new families. They are told their birth parents didn't want them, that their new families will love them better. The psychological manipulation was as cruel as the physical trafficking. These children were being brainwashed to believe their kidnapping was actually a rescue. Sarah found facility addresses buried in expense reports. 3 locations in Oregon, a ranch outside Bend, a converted warehouse in Salem, and a residential complex in the coastal town of Bandon, all registered under shell companies connected to Healing Hands Global. "We have to call the police now," Jessica urged. "This is enough evidence to—" "No," Sarah interrupted, her voice hard with determination. "Look at these financial records. Payments to J. Morrison Legal Consultations and Portland PD Consulting Services. They have people inside the police department. If we expose this the wrong way, they'll move the children before we can save them." Jessica stared at the damning financial evidence. "Then what do we do?" Sarah studied the facility locations and transport schedules. According to the records, a major relocation event was planned for the following week. Multiple children would be moved to final placement destinations. "We find Lily ourselves," Sarah said with deadly calm, "and we document everything so thoroughly that they can't escape justice when we expose them." She looked at the facility in Bandon, only 2 hours from Portland. If Lily was still in Oregon, still in the preparation phase, there might still be time to save her daughter and the other children trapped in this nightmare. At 2:17 a.m., Sarah crouched behind a cluster of pine trees, watching Dr. Whitmore's black Mercedes navigate the empty industrial district on Portland's outskirts. She'd been following him for 3 hours, her heart hammering with each turn through increasingly isolated areas. The intercepted emails had mentioned a supply coordination meeting scheduled for tonight, and Sarah was determined to document whatever Dr. Whitmore was really doing in the darkness beyond public scrutiny. The Mercedes pulled into the parking lot of an abandoned textile warehouse, its broken windows and rusted loading docks creating ominous shadows in the moonlight. Sarah parked her car a block away and approached on foot, staying low behind shipping containers and overgrown vegetation. 2 other vehicles waited in the lot, a white panel van with out-of-state plates and a dark SUV with tinted windows. Sarah's blood chilled as she recognized the van from her surveillance photos. It had been parked outside her house twice in the past week. Through her telephoto camera lens, Sarah watched Dr. Whitmore emerge from his car carrying a leather briefcase. 2 men stepped from the other vehicles, one tall and thin wearing an expensive suit, the other stocky with military bearing, dressed in casual clothes that couldn't hide the bulge of a concealed weapon. "Phase 3 transportation is confirmed for Thursday," the suited man said, his accent vaguely European. 6 packages total, including the special request from our Dubai client. Sarah's hands trembled as she adjusted her camera settings, documenting every face, every license plate, every exchange. These weren't people. They were talking about children like shipping cargo. Dr. Whitmore opened his briefcase, revealing thick manila folders. "Medical documentation is complete for all subjects. The Mitchell girl has responded well to psychological conditioning. She's stopped asking about her previous placement." Sarah nearly dropped her camera. They were talking about Lily. Her daughter was alive but being systematically brainwashed to forget her real family. The stocky man accepted an envelope from Dr. Whitmore. "Transportation to the coastal facility happens tomorrow night. From there, international departure within 72 hours. "What about the mother?" the suited man asked. "Our contacts report she's becoming increasingly problematic." Dr. Whitmore's expression hardened. "Sarah Mitchell has outlived her usefulness. She's gathered too much information and made too many connections. I recommend we expedite her removal before Thursday's operation." The casual way they discussed murdering her sent ice through Sarah's veins, but she forced herself to keep filming. This footage would be crucial evidence if she survived to use it. "Make it look accidental," the suited man instructed. "Car accident, home invasion, medical emergency, nothing that draws additional investigation. I have contacts in the medical examiner's office," Dr. Whitmore replied with chilling professionalism. "A woman under severe psychological stress, history of prescription medication, apparent suicide by overdose. Very tragic but completely believable." Sarah watched in horror as they planned her murder with the same clinical detachment they'd used to discuss a routine medical procedure. These people had perfected the art of making victims disappear without leaving traces. The meeting concluded with handshakes and the exchange of additional documentation. As the vehicles prepared to leave, Sarah caught a crucial detail through her lens: GPS coordinates written on a notepad in the suited man's hand. She photographed the coordinates just before the man climbed into the SUV. As the three vehicles departed in different directions, Sarah remained hidden until their taillights disappeared completely. Back in her car, Sarah's hands shook as she input the coordinates into her phone's GPS. The location pointed to a remote area near the Oregon coast, exactly where the financial records had indicated one of the transition facilities. She had less than 48 hours before they moved Lily internationally and eliminated Sarah permanently. The coordinates might lead her directly to her daughter, but approaching the facility would be walking into a trap designed by people who'd already planned her death. Sarah stared at the GPS coordinates glowing on her phone screen. Tomorrow night, everything would be decided. Lily's fate, her own survival, and the future of every child trapped in this nightmare network. The weekend security at Portland Hills Medical Center was minimal, exactly what Sarah and Jessica had counted on as they slipped through the employee entrance using Jessica's access card at 11:47 p.m. "We have maybe 20 minutes before the next security round," Jessica whispered, leading Sarah through darkened corridors toward Dr. Whitmore's office suite. Sarah's backpack contained camera equipment, portable hard drives, and lock-picking tools she'd learned to use from online tutorials. If they were caught, both women faced arrest, but with less than 36 hours before Lily's international transport, desperate measures were their only option. Dr. Whitmore's office door yielded to Jessica's master key after 3 tense minutes of fumbling in the darkness. Sarah immediately went to his computer, while Jessica rifled through filing cabinets with practiced efficiency. "Password protected," Sarah muttered, trying various combinations based on the doctor's personal information. "Try Healing Hands 2019, the year he started receiving payments from them," Jessica suggested, pulling files from locked drawers. The computer unlocked, revealing a desktop organized with military precision. Sarah plugged in her portable drive and began copying everything: emails, financial records, patient files, and a folder ominously labeled Active Inventory. "Sarah, you need to see this." Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. She held open a thick file folder containing detailed profiles of dozens of children, complete with medical histories, family assessments, and psychological evaluations. Each child's photo was paperclipped to documentation that read like livestock auction descriptions. Lily's file was 3 times thicker than the others. Photos tracked her physical development over 2 years, along with detailed notes about her adaptation progress. Recent entries made Sarah's blood boil. Subject has ceased references to birth mother as of week 47, successfully integrated new family narrative, shows attachment to assigned caretaker, ready for final placement phase. Physical therapy has improved mobility significantly, client satisfaction guaranteed, transport authorization. Thursday, 3:00 a.m. Pacific. "They've been experimenting on her," Sarah choked out, reading medical notes about procedures that had never been discussed with her, improving her mobility to make her more valuable to buyers. Jessica found correspondence that revealed the full scope of the network's operations. Dr. Whitmore wasn't just a recruiter, he was regional coordinator for the entire Western United States operation. His responsibilities included identifying targets, coordinating removals, managing 3 transition facilities, and overseeing international transport logistics. Most damning were email threads discussing problem containment. Sarah's name appeared multiple times, along with detailed surveillance reports and elimination plans scheduled for Tuesday morning, less than 10 hours away. "They're going to stage my suicide tomorrow," Sarah said, reading her own death warrant with surreal calm. "Overdose of anxiety medication discovered by a concerned neighbor who conveniently has keys to my house." Jessica pulled out a manila envelope labeled Relocation Protocols, containing maps, building layouts and security procedures for all 3 Oregon facilities. The coastal location, Bandon Residential Retreat, housed 12 children aged 6 to 14, all in various stages of psychological conditioning. Sarah photographed floor plans showing Lily's room number, daily schedules, guard rotations, and emergency procedures. The facility operated like a high-security boarding school, complete with medical staff, psychological counselors, and armed security disguised as groundskeepers. The computer finished copying Dr. Whitmore's files just as footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Sarah yanked out the drive while Jessica frantically reshuffled papers back into their original positions. "Security round?" Jessica breathed, switching off her flashlight. They crouched behind the desk as a beam of light swept past the office windows. The guard's radio crackled with routine check-ins as his footsteps continued down the hallway. After 5 eternal minutes, they slipped out of the office and made their way back through the medical center's maze of corridors. In the parking garage, Sarah clutched the portable drive containing enough evidence to destroy the entire trafficking network. "What now?" Jessica asked. Sarah looked at the facility maps glowing on her phone screen. "Now we get Lily back before they kill us both." The coordinates from Dr. Whitmore's meeting pointed to the Bandon facility, where her daughter was being held just hours before permanent disappearance into international trafficking. Sarah had one chance to save Lily and expose the network before becoming another convenient suicide statistic. Time was running out, and the hunters were closing in. The Bandon residential retreat looked deceptively peaceful in the pre-dawn darkness, a sprawling complex of modern buildings nestled among coastal pines, designed to resemble an upscale wellness center rather than a human trafficking facility. Sarah crouched in the tree line with Jessica, studying the compound through binoculars as her heart hammered against her ribs. Security cameras swept the perimeter in precise patterns, and she could see at least 3 guards patrolling the grounds with military precision. "There," Jessica pointed to a basement window on the building's east side. "According to the floor plans, that's near the children's dormitory wing." Sarah had memorized every detail from Dr. Whitmore's stolen files. Lily was housed in room 7B, along with 11 other children ranging in age from 6 to 14. All had disabilities. All had been systematically separated from their families and psychologically conditioned to accept new identities. The window Jessica indicated was protected by security bars, but Sarah had come prepared with bolt cutters and glass-cutting tools. Getting inside was possible. Getting out alive with 12 children was the challenge that terrified her. "The guard rotation changes at 4:30 a.m., Sarah whispered, checking her watch. "We have a 7-minute window when the east side is unmonitored." They moved closer to the building, staying low and following paths Sarah had mapped from the surveillance footage. The compound's sinister purpose became clearer as they approached. Children's artwork hung in windows, but the drawings depicted families that didn't match the children's ethnicities, suggesting systematic identity replacement. Sarah reached the basement window and began working on the security bars with practiced efficiency. The metal yielded after 5 agonizing minutes, and she carefully cut through the glass to create an opening large enough to crawl through. The basement corridor was sterile and institutional, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that hummed ominously. Sarah could hear the soft sounds of sleeping children through closed doors, marked with numbers instead of names. Room 7B was third on the right. Sarah's hands trembled as she slowly turned the handle, terrified of what she might find after 2 years of forced separation. The room contained 4 beds, 3 occupied by sleeping children. In the bed closest to the window lay a girl who made Sarah's heart stop completely. Lily had grown taller, her blonde hair now reaching her shoulders, but Sarah would recognize her daughter anywhere. She appeared physically healthy, better than when she disappeared, but her peaceful sleeping expression couldn't hide the subtle changes that spoke of trauma and psychological manipulation. Sarah approached the bed with tears streaming down her face. "Lily," she whispered. "Baby, it's Mommy." Lily's eyes opened slowly, confusion clouding her features as she focused on Sarah's face. For a terrifying moment, Sarah saw no recognition, only the wariness of a child who'd been taught to fear strangers. "Who are you?" Lily asked in a voice that sounded older, more guarded than Sarah remembered. "I'm your mother, Sarah Mitchell. You disappeared from the hospital 2 years ago. I've been looking for you every single day." Lily sat up slowly, studying Sarah's face with heartbreaking intensity. "My mother died in a car accident. Mrs. Henderson told me. She takes care of us now because our old families couldn't handle our special needs." The systematic brainwashing was worse than Sarah had imagined. They'd convinced Lily that her own mother was dead, that she'd been unwanted and abandoned. "Lily, look at me closely. Remember your mermaid doll, Marina? Remember the stories we used to read about underwater kingdoms? Remember how you wanted to swim like Ariel?" Something flickered in Lily's eyes, a spark of buried memory fighting against 2 years of psychological conditioning. "Marina," she whispered, and Sarah saw her daughter's true self beginning to surface. "Yes, baby. Marina with the green tail and the little heart patch I sewed on her arm. You never went anywhere without her." Lily's hand went to her throat, where a small scar Sarah didn't remember marked her neck. They said Marina was just a dream, that I made her up because I was sad about being different." Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Lily a photo of them together, mother and daughter smiling, with Marina prominently displayed in Lily's lap. "This is real, sweetheart. I'm real, and I'm here to take you home." For the first time in 2 years, Sarah saw recognition dawn in her daughter's eyes, followed immediately by a joy so pure it nearly broke her heart. "We have to go now, baby," Sarah whispered urgently to Lily, who clung to her with desperate recognition. "But we can't leave the other children behind." The dormitory held 11 other young victims, each psychologically conditioned to believe their kidnapping was a rescue. Sarah's heart broke as she looked at their sleeping faces, children who'd been stolen from families that would never stop searching. "Mommy," Lily's voice was small and scared. "Mrs. Henderson said if we ever tried to leave, bad things would happen to us. She said our old families gave us away because we were too much trouble." Sarah knelt beside her daughter's bed, fury burning in her chest at the systematic cruelty these children had endured. "None of that is true, sweetheart. Every single child here has a family that loves them and wants them back." Jessica appeared in the doorway, her face pale with urgency. "Sarah, we have a problem. The morning shift arrives in 15 minutes, and I just saw Dr. Whitmore's car in the parking lot." Through the small window, Sarah could see additional vehicles arriving, black SUVs with tinted windows that screamed government or military involvement. The trafficking network was mobilizing for the planned transport, which meant they had only minutes before discovery. "Help me wake the others," Sarah told Jessica. "We're taking everyone." They moved through the dormitory quietly, gently rousing children who ranged from 6 to 14 years old. Each child showed the same initial confusion and fear, conditioned to distrust anyone claiming to be family. Tommy Chen, now 10 years old, cowered when Sarah approached his bed. "Are you here to take us to the punishment room?" he asked, in a voice that broke Sarah's heart. "No, sweetheart, I'm here to take you home to your real families," Sarah said gently. "Your parents have been looking for you every single day." Emma Rodriguez, 12 now and walking with improved mobility, clutched a stuffed animal that clearly wasn't from her original family. "Our parents died," she said with programmed certainty. "That's why we're here." Sarah showed them photos on her phone, missing children posters, family photos, news articles about searches that never ended. Slowly, buried memories began surfacing as the children recognized themselves in pictures with families they'd been taught to forget. The sound of footsteps in the corridor above sent panic through the group. Sarah counted quickly, 12 children, most able to walk, but some requiring assistance. Getting them all out through the basement window would take too long. "There's another way," Lily whispered, pointing to a maintenance door Sarah hadn't noticed. "It leads to the laundry room. Sometimes they take us that way for medical appointments." Sarah tried the door unlocked. Beyond lay a service corridor that connected to the building's main systems. According to the floor plans she'd memorized, it should lead to an emergency exit on the building's west side. "Listen to me, all of you," Sarah addressed the group with quiet intensity. "Your real families are waiting for you. Police are coming to help us, but we have to be very brave and very quiet." Jessica helped organize the children into pairs, with older kids assisting younger ones. Alex Foster, now 9 and stronger than when he disappeared, took the hand of a 6-year-old girl who'd been missing for 8 months. They moved through the service corridor like a careful parade of liberation. Sarah carried the youngest child, while Lily used her improved mobility to help guide others. The psychological conditioning was breaking down as suppressed memories returned. Children whispering names of siblings, parents, pets they'd been told never existed. The emergency exit appeared ahead, marked with dim lighting. Sarah's heart pounded as she carefully opened the door, expecting alarms or guards. Instead, she found darkness and the sound of ocean waves in the distance. "Keep moving toward the trees," Sarah instructed, pointing to the forest line where Jessica had positioned their escape vehicle. As the last child cleared the building, Sarah heard shouts from inside. Their absence had been discovered. Flashlights swept the compound as guards mobilized for a search that would determine whether 12 families would be reunited or lose their children forever. "Run," Sarah told the group, lifting the smallest child into her arms. "Run toward the light and don't look back." Behind them, the trafficking facility erupted into chaos as the carefully constructed prison began collapsing around the criminals who'd built it. Detective Johnson stared at the mountain of evidence spread across the FBI field office conference table. Documents, photos, financial records, and video footage that painted an undeniable picture of international human trafficking operating under the guise of medical care. "This is the most comprehensive trafficking bust we've seen in a decade," Agent Maria Santos said, reviewing Sarah's meticulously documented evidence. 12 facilities across 8 states, over 200 missing children, millions in illegal transactions. Sarah sat beside the rescued children in the victim services area, watching through glass windows as federal agents coordinated simultaneous raids across multiple states. In her arms, Lily clung tightly to Marina, the mermaid doll that had become the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. "Mrs. Mitchell," Agent Santos approached with a tablet displaying live footage from Portland Hills Medical Center. "Dr. Whitmore is in custody. He's requesting to make a statement." The interrogation room video showed Dr. Marcus Whitmore, once confident and composed, now broken and desperate. His lawyer sat beside him as he detailed the network's operations with clinical precision. "The organization has operated for 12 years, Dr. Whitmore's voice came through the speakers. "We identified children with disabilities whose families showed signs of stress, financial problems, marital issues, lack of support systems. These children were seen as burdens by society." Sarah's hands clenched into fists as she listened to his twisted justification. "We provided them with opportunities their birth families couldn't offer. Wealthy families worldwide who wanted to make a difference, research facilities advancing medical science. These children became inspirational figures instead of societal drains." "How many children?" Agent Santos pressed. 247 over 12 years. The network included physicians, social workers, private security, international adoption facilitators, and document specialists across North America and Europe. The scope was staggering. Dr. Whitmore revealed names, locations, financial structures, and transport methods used to move children like valuable commodities. He described conditioning facilities, where children were psychologically manipulated to accept new identities and forget their original families. "The Mitchell girl was particularly valuable," he continued without emotion. "Her spina bifida made her inspirational, but her intelligence and adaptability made her highly desirable to clients. She was scheduled for placement with a technology executive in Dubai who specifically requested a disabled child to showcase his humanitarian values." Sarah felt sick hearing her daughter described like merchandise, but Agent Santos squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "He's giving us everything. This testimony will put the entire network away for life." The interrogation revealed the network's most disturbing aspects. Children were subjected to experimental medical procedures to improve their marketability, physical therapy to increase mobility, psychological conditioning to ensure compliance, and even surgical procedures to enhance or diminish certain characteristics based on buyer preferences. Dr. Whitmore's motivation wasn't entirely financial. These families couldn't provide adequate care. Single mothers working multiple jobs, parents overwhelmed by medical costs, marriages crumbling under pressure. "We offered these children better lives with families who had resources and motivation to help them thrive. By erasing their identities and selling them to strangers," Agent Santos challenged, "by giving them opportunities for success instead of lives of limitation." Sarah watched other arrests unfold on multiple screens. Dr. Patricia Wells from Seattle, arrested at her clinic. Marcus Rodriguez from the Phoenix facility, taken into custody during a patient consultation. Judge Harold Morrison from Portland, found with falsified custody documents and $300,000 in offshore accounts. The financial investigation revealed a sophisticated money laundering operation. Healing Hands. Global had moved over $50 million through shell companies, with payments ranging from $75,000 for younger children to $250,000 for teenagers with specific characteristics requested by buyers. Most importantly, the network's client database contained names and locations of families who'd purchased trafficked children. International law enforcement was coordinating rescues in 17 countries, reuniting children who'd been missing for years with families who'd never stopped searching. 23 children were recovered today, Agent Santos reported, including 8 who were scheduled for international transport tomorrow. "Your evidence and rescue operation saved these kids from disappearing forever." As Dr. Whitmore's confession continued, detailing corruption within police departments, social services, and medical institutions, Sarah realized the true scope of the evil they'd uncovered. But watching Lily slowly reconnect with suppressed memories, seeing her daughter's personality emerge from beneath 2 years of psychological manipulation, Sarah knew that justice was finally being served. The network that had stolen her daughter and hundreds of other children was collapsing, and the criminals who treated vulnerable children as commodities would spend the rest of their lives behind bars. 6 months after the rescue, Sarah stood in the doorway of Lily's bedroom, the same room she'd visited every morning for 2 years, speaking to emptiness and memories. But today, her 14-year-old daughter sat at her desk, drawing pictures of underwater kingdoms where mermaids swam freely through coral castles. The physical therapy is working wonderfully, Dr. Rebecca Chen, Lily's new physician, had reported earlier that week. Her mobility has improved significantly, though we're reversing some experimental procedures that were performed without proper consent. Lily looked up from her artwork, her blue eyes bright with a spark that had taken months to fully return. "Mom, do you think Marina missed me while I was gone?" Sarah smiled, watching her daughter cradle the teal-scaled mermaid doll that had become the key to their reunion. "I think Marina never stopped believing you'd come home." The journey back to normalcy had been challenging. Lily struggled with complex trauma, alternating between clinging to Sarah and withdrawing into protective silence. Family therapy sessions helped them rebuild trust and communication, slowly healing psychological wounds that ran deeper than any physical disability. "I remember more things every day," Lily said, adding details to her drawing. "Like how you used to read me stories about brave princesses who never gave up, even when things seemed impossible. Just like you, baby girl. You were the bravest princess of all." Sarah's advocacy work had grown from personal tragedy into a national mission. The Sarah Mitchell Foundation now helped families of missing children with disabilities, providing resources, support, and investigative assistance that traditional law enforcement often couldn't offer. Jessica Torres had become the Foundation's Director of Medical Advocacy, using her nursing background to identify warning signs of predatory behavior in healthcare settings. Together, they'd helped locate 17 additional children and prevent countless more from disappearing. "Mrs. Mitchell," Lily held up her drawing, a detailed underwater scene showing a young mermaid swimming beside her mother, both figures whole and free. "I want to show this to Tommy and Emma when they visit next week." The rescued children maintained contact through supervised support groups, helping each other process their experiences and rebuild their identities. Tommy Chen had returned to his family in Seattle, while Emma Rodriguez was thriving in Portland with her father and new stepmother. Dr. Whitmore and 43 other network members received sentences ranging from life imprisonment to 25 years without parole. The international investigation had dismantled trafficking operations in 12 countries, rescuing over 200 children and preventing the network from claiming new victims. Most importantly, the case had led to systematic changes in how missing children cases were investigated, particularly when disabilities were involved. The Lilly Protocol now required enhanced scrutiny of medical professionals involved in cases of missing children with special needs. "Mom," Lily said quietly, setting down her colored pencils, "I used to have nightmares about forgetting you completely, but now I dream about swimming in the ocean, and you're always there waiting on the shore." Sarah knelt beside her daughter's chair, wrapping her arms around the girl who'd grown so much during their forced separation. "I'll always be waiting for you, sweetheart. No matter how far you swim, I'll always be here when you need to come home." Through the window, afternoon sunlight streamed across Lily's art supplies and the collection of dolls that had waited patiently for her return. Marina sat in her place of honor, no longer a symbol of loss, but a reminder that love and determination could overcome even the darkest evil. "Ready for physical therapy?" Sarah asked, helping Lily transfer to her wheelchair, the same pink chair that had been empty for 2 terrifying years. "Ready," Lily smiled, clutching Marina close. "But first, can we stop by the Foundation office? I want to finish the letter I'm writing to families who are still searching for their children." As they left the house together, Sarah marveled at her daughter's resilience and compassion. Lily had survived unimaginable trauma, but emerged with an even stronger desire to help others facing similar darkness. The nightmare was over, the family was whole, and tomorrow would bring new opportunities to ensure that no other parent would endure the agony of searching for a stolen child. They were finally truly home,